So last week, I got to go to Las Vegas to attend NAB. It's my first time back since 2019, and these are some of the things that I saw that I felt were interesting. So if you're not familiar what NAB is essentially this huge convention full of filmmaking tech, from lights, cameras, lenses, microphones, just pretty much everything that a filmmaker or a content creator would love. So one of the first places I stopped by was the Aperture and Amaran booth. I love their products, their lights work amazing. And the first thing I noticed when I looked up was this gigantic 20 feet by 20 feet huge LED mat of sorts just shining light down onto their booth. And the first thing I thought was, okay, if you own a studio, having a light that big shining straight down, and you have the option of using the aprons if you don't want the light to spread out everywhere, it's probably one of the most versatile lighting that just looks good out of the gate. And then of course you can bring in other lights to shape things, but you can do a whole lot with just that big of a top-down light. And I have to imagine that it's gonna be much cheaper than the Hollywood alternative. And they don't just have the 20 by 20, they do have other infinity mat sizes. They have a 1x2, 2x2, I think a 4x4 and an 8x8. And the one thing that I thought was interesting was the little air mattress in front of it, which is just an inflatable diffusion mat of sorts. In this case, yes, you can take it off. It's not permanently affixed to the light itself. It's Velcroed off on the back, so you can take off the inflatable diffusion. And they have this little tool that you can inflate it within a minute or deflate it as it sucks all the air out. But the one thing I love about this inflatable diffusion thing is that you can basically just fold it up and it'll be very, very small. This also makes me wonder if Aperture is going to experiment. Can you imagine a Bowens mount, and then you have this inflatable softbox, and it can either be inflated to be a bank or completely circularly round, something like that. And then when you're done, you suck out all the air, you pack it up, and basically you now have, like, I don't know, a 36-inch softbox packed down to the size of a Whopper or just a really big sandwich, instead of having a gigantic thing that you have to bring with you. Now, some of you guys might be wondering, what happens if you pop it or jab it with something sharp? Well, I guess your first line of defense is to use gaff tape to try to salvage it, especially if you hopefully don't pop the clear part. But I'm gonna have to assume that it's not easy to pop, and the material itself is quite tough. So I feel like short of you actually taking a knife and poking it, I feel like normal stuff is probably not going to truly mess it up. Next up, we have iFootage, and they showed off this one piece of kit that I'm definitely gonna want, especially for NAB next year, and that is their Cobra 3 Strike monopod. Essentially, it is a monopod, but instead of twisting and unlocking each section, there's just this one handle grip part. You depress the button and you're able to pull it up, or you can push it back down and get the height you need in a very quick setting. Not only that, he showed it by jumping on it, and I jumped on it myself to try to see if I can push it down with my own body weight. I'm not exactly a light person, and it really didn't move. So I'm pretty sure whatever 10-pound camera you have or 15-pound camera, it's gonna be fine on this thing. And it also has all the iFootage stuff in terms of their quick release system. So if you want to take off your ball head and put on a video head, you can do that. You can take off the feet, the monomod feet, put on your ball head, and then have a very low angle setup very quickly. So it has all the stuff that iFootage is known for, but now we can set up our monopods quicker than ever. Next up, we have Rode. I love their audio products, so I was hoping they have something new, and they do. They have this new Interview Pro reporter style microphone, and it basically works along with their entire Series 4 receiver systems. So if you have a Rode Wireless Pro, a Rode Wireless Me, or any of their Procasters, that's going to be able to wirelessly communicate to them. Because of that, there's timecode built in, and therefore you get the benefit of using timecode. They also have 32-bit float internally, which is great. So you're basically good to go in any sort of interview situation. Now, I did ask them, is the capsule different from the Rode Wireless Me and Rode Wireless Pro? And they confirmed, yes, it is a bigger capsule, allowing for a much fuller sound than just coming from the small clip-on mics. It's also omnidirectional, it is condenser, and it's very forgiving in terms of someone who doesn't understand where to place the microphone. I basically placed the microphone between me and another person. There must have been about 3 feet of distance between us, and that microphone, even though it was that far away, was able to pick up our voice quite well, and therefore, when I'm doing some sort of interview, I don't need to worry about the person not putting the microphone near their mouth. If they put it here and they start waving it around, it's still gonna catch the voice quite well. So I'm hoping to get that specifically for next year's NAB. Next up is Coma. I haven't worked with them in a while, but it was fun to go over there, check out their booth, and they were very happy to show me something that they believed I was gonna be interested in, and sure enough, I'm interested. So it is the VM40. It's a little shotgun mic. I've done their VM20 before, reviewed it, and the sound quality is not that bad at all. I use it as a backup microphone if my Rode VideoMic NTG is already being used somewhere else. But this one is interesting. Number one, it's got 32-bit float internal recording on the microphone itself, so that's already pretty cool. But it's also wireless, so you can wirelessly just go into the receiver. That's just nice. The ability to go either wired or wireless, giving you more options on the go without actually having to plug in a separate transmitter to the microphone. It's all built into one. And if you want to, you can also plug it into your computer and use it as a USB microphone itself. So that's pretty awesome. I will say this, I did talk to them a little bit and said, hey, I understand why people are all doing built-in lithium-ion batteries, but could you please consider using AA batteries instead? That way, if something does happen, someone forgets to charge it, they just have to go to a gas station and buy the battery. They said, oh, is that what people want? In my opinion, yes, because we don't want to just have these microphones that once the battery inside is dead, we have to throw it away. We'd rather just keep using it. Next up was the DJI booth. I was happy to finally play around with the Ronin 4D in my hands. It's probably the perfect camera for me. The only thing that I don't like is that the handles are quite close together, so it can get a little heavy on the shoulders. I wish that they were a little bit wider, but I understand the design philosophy. Maybe Tilta or somebody will make some sort of rig thing that you can hold it much further apart. Otherwise, it can get heavy over time, especially if you're using it on a full shoot day, like sometimes that I have to with a whole gimbal setup. But I did check out their Focus Pro, and essentially it's their LiDAR technology. Instead of it being on a gimbal on the Ronin 4D, you now have the ability to basically place it on any sort of camera system that you have. And there's this tiny little screen on your handle portion so that you can tell it what to track for a follow focus. And it does work pretty well. The only thing you're not going to get is that cool waveform. The only way to get the waveform is if you have the high bright monitor and wireless system, which costs quite a bit, and that's going to give you your waveform. Otherwise, the Focus Pro is about $1,000, which does seem quite a bit, but when you take into consideration how much the focus motor is, the LiDAR system, and then of course that remote to talk to it, it does actually make sense in terms of why it would cost $1,000. But if that thing is ever going to be on sale, there's a good chance I'm going to buy it. And it does also have the same features as the Ronin 4D, which is that the focus wheel on your trigger finger is going to keep moving in one certain mode, which means you have the ability to stop the focus motor from moving. You can feel the tension in your finger, and then once you want to release it and allow focus to continue, you can either slowly release it or just release it, and therefore you have much more control that's much more intuitive to get more cinematic focus pulls where you want it. Next up, we have Blazar, or Greatjoy. I don't know, I think they've now officially moved to the Blazar name, but they released or showed off their Kato or Kato 2X anamorphic lenses. And these are for full frame. They're very small, they're not that big, and the 2X looks good. The flares that I got to see from it were nice, very similar to Greatjoy. It's not overbearing, it's nice and thin, which is what I like. And then of course you get to see finally that nice 2X squeeze for the bokeh balls. There are some interesting stuff like barrel distortion. The 50mm, I believe, had kind of a swirly bokeh, if you will, very aching to the Helios lens. That's not a bad thing. I rather have something that looks interesting versus super clinical. So the one thing I would kind of mention is that the T-stops are not the same across the board, which is kind of, unfortunate, but when you are making budget lenses, those are the kind of compromises you have to account for, is that their widest aperture is not going to be the same. Not only that, some of them are not going to necessarily cover the entire full frame sensor. You are going to have to kind of zoom in from the vignette, which is also not necessarily that great, but if you are a super 35 shooter, well, you're pretty much good to go. Like, that is going to be perfectly fine. If you're a micro 4/3 shooter, then you're definitely going to be fine. Next up was the Blackmagic booth. I did have a meeting with them and got to talk about what I'm looking for, what kind of stuff I want to see in the Blackmagic camera app. But they also had their new Pixis 6K that was just announced before NAB. And that was really fun to take a look at. It was much smaller than I thought it would be, but I mean, it's basically a very, very nice little small production camera that can definitely shoot some amazing things. Now, I did kind of wish that they had a variable ND in front of it, but ever since they moved over to the L mount system, at this very moment in time, there's just not an actual piece of equipment that can slide in between the L mount and a sensor and be able to give you a variable ND. Now, Panasonic has filed a patent where they are making one, apparently. We don't know for sure. But if that's the case, I'm hoping Blackmagic is kind of part of the L mount alliance, in which case maybe they're going to continue working together and we will eventually see a built-in ND on their very mirrorless style cameras. Because honestly speaking, even if they're gonna say, all right, well, most people are gonna rig a matte box to this, I was like, well, sure. But at the end of the day, we would rather have a built-in ND. Last up is Zoing. And I was very more just wanting to see their lights, because they kind of started making lights around the time where everybody was making lights, even though their company didn't specialize in it at all. But I was more just wanting to take a look at just how small exactly was their 60X and I think the 60 RGB that they just came out with. And I was very surprised at just how small it was. It was basically like palm sized and you can pop on a battery. This has me intrigued, mainly for independent filmmakers that are super run and gun, of which I've been a part of. And when I say super run and gun, I mean like, yeah, you're pushing your ISO higher. You're not necessarily trying to get the most pristine image because of how fast you have to work. And I feel like having a whole set of these pop on the battery and you're just setting them up very quickly with very cheap light stands, this could be something for people to look into. And I'm also applauding Zoing for just really kind of going out there. They're just making these lights and they don't look conventional at all in terms of their design. And I kind of want them to keep doing this, because at some point they're going to figure out something that's completely new, and that could just raise the competition for everybody around. So as of right now, their very small 60-watt lights are interesting in my mind. Aside from all the cool gadgets at NAB, I would have to say my favorite part of NAB was simply either meeting fans or just seeing and hanging out with all the other creators that we've known each other for years, but now we get to see each other face to face. We wandered the show floor together, had awesome conversations. That's definitely my favorite part of NAB. So hopefully I will see you guys at NAB again next year. We'll see. And other than that, I hope this video has been interesting enough in terms of like certain pieces of gear that you might be looking into. And if you have any other questions, go ahead and just leave it down below and I will answer them as much as I can. Or maybe we'll have a live stream if you want me to go more in depth and we can just chat. All right. So thank you so much. I will see you guys in the next one.